Hi, you've clicked on to today's tropical tidbit for Saturday, October 11th. The thoughts expressed in this video are mine alone, and in making decisions, please always consult the National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service, not me. Well, here's the Atlantic in the middle of a very busy day globally in the tropics again, and it may make this video run a little bit longer than usual, but starting off in the Atlantic, we have Tropical Storm Fay, now fully tropical. Didn't look yesterday like it would have much time to make a fully tropical transition, but today there is some thunderstorms finally covering the center for the first time. Although this is still heavily sheared out of the southeast, the circulation has become much tighter, and under that convection indicates that warm core processes are taking place, which has allowed the NHC to call this a fully tropical cyclone. Now, there is still a lot of shear, so this isn't going to be intensifying very much on its way toward Bermuda, but it did intensify last night, and the pressure down to 991 and 993 here from the passes of the recon plane, and some patches of wind showing up a near hurricane force at flight level, which has prompted the NHC to increase phase winds to 70 miles per hour sustained. That is a strong tropical storm. It's going to be no day at the beach tomorrow in Bermuda as this passes by. Tropical storm warnings are out. This is the forecast track. Takes it southeast of Bermuda, not directly over the island, but again, the system is being sheared out of the southeast, which means the heavy weather is all northwest of the center anyway. So even if this passes southeast of the island, the direct impacts, the heaviest impacts, will move directly over the island anyway. So the full impact of Tropical Storm Fay will be felt tonight and tomorrow, and then after Bermuda, it will be affecting no other land masses. Now, following Fay, we're watching closely this wave behind Invest 90L, and as this ridge in the wake of Fay pushes toward the west, that will also push 90L toward the west, impacting the northern Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico, and perhaps the Dominican Republic as well during the next couple of days. And right now, if we look at water vapor imagery, the environment is not terribly conducive for any significant development right now. We have a very complicated, messy flow pattern aloft, and there's a lot of shearing going on right now, and the system is not in a great spot for development at the moment. So we might expect some heavy rain and gusty winds in the northern Antilles and Puerto Rico, but probably not an actual tropical storm. But as time goes on, this upper level trough to the west of Fay is supposed to dive south toward the Caribbean as this ridge builds in here. And what that may do is, once the upper low is down here and 90L is moving near Puerto Rico, there may be an area of lighter winds aloft that could allow some actual tropical development of this system as it moves near and north of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. So when that happens, if it happens, we may see the potential for some impacts to the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas if it is allowed to move that far west. And if we look at the model forecasts, again, the European and GFS still fighting over the timing of this trough coming over the eastern United States, and this is important for 90L as we talked about yesterday, because if the European is right and this is slow, still over the Ohio Valley by day 6, that allows 90L, which is in here, to make it all the way west toward the Bahamas before recurving out to sea, and that could potentially deliver impacts to that area. But if the GFS is right, it's much faster with the trough. Canadian Maritimes by day 6, that causes 90L to recurve east of the Bahamas, sparing them, but potentially moving up toward Bermuda again after they recover from Tropical Storm Fay. So the track of this system very much still a question based on the timing of this trough, and it's honestly very hard to know which one of these models has a better handle. The European is very good, but having the GFS disagree like this, these cutoff troughs very hard to forecast 5 to 6 days in advance, and we do still have a lot of time. These kind of questions will be answered within a couple of days, but at this point we're not entirely sure. Now, whether this develops at all is also still a question. You see, the European does not show much here. Now, yesterday it had a hurricane at this position by day 6. Today, this particular run is much weaker. Now, it is only one run, but again, the environment not particularly ideal for this system to develop, but it could potentially allow perhaps a 48-hour window or so of development north of the Caribbean. So there is still the potential for there to be a tropical storm moving toward the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos next week, and that's just something to keep a wary eye on. Not an imminent concern for the Lesser Antilles or Puerto Rico, except for some heavy rain and gusty winds, but down the line may have to watch in this area next week. Questions still yet to be answered in a complex pattern. So that's about it for the Atlantic. Again, we have the monsoonal gyre over Central America, bringing heavy rain there. And if anything does try to rotate up into the Gulf of Honduras or the Southern Gulf during next week, it will take many days to occur. These setups take a lot of time to evolve, and it will be late next week, if not the week after, before we actually see something try to rotate up here. So not an imminent threat except for the heavy rain over Central America. Now we move to the Central Pacific, where we talked about yesterday. There's this general pattern where we have the MJO providing upward motion in the tropics here, so you see this lower than normal pressure, and we have this high pressure off of California, which is causing air to pile up toward the tropics, and that piling up of air, or convergence, helps the air to rise, and that can help incubate this area, if you will, perhaps get some tropical disturbances to develop and become storms here during the next week or so. Now, yesterday, the European and GFS, our best models out here, did not show any development, but today you see them starting to catch on. This is the GFS out to day 7, showing a tropical storm south of the Big Island by day 7, and the European also showing a tropical storm south of Hawaii by day 7. So this was not there yesterday, but the pattern we talked about starting to be picked up on by the models, showing the potential for tropical development in the Central Pacific, which does happen a lot in the fall, by the way. It's not at all uncommon to have tropical development in the late autumn out here in this area of the world. Now the big question that we talked about is whether one of these fronts can come down and potentially pick up a storm like this and bring it up toward the Hawaiian Islands themselves. And a week out, it's obviously impossible to really say whether this could happen, but in this kind of a pattern, it's just worth watching. If we have a pattern where we can incubate the tropics, get a potential for a storm to develop, and then maybe get drawn up toward the islands from one of these big Gulf of Alaska fronts late in the fall, that is something that can happen and has happened in the past. So something potentially in the forecast for Hawaii next week, just something to keep an eye on in terms of the pattern during the next few days. No imminent threat, as we don't actually have a storm yet, just keep an eye out for one. Now in the Western Pacific, we have Typhoon Vongfong, we talked about yesterday, moving toward Okinawa, moved really close to the eastern end of the island during their daytime, our nighttime last night, and not sure if they'll call official landfall here of the eye, but observations from the official station there seemed to indicate that the sustained winds never stayed above typhoon force for very long, hopefully indicating that this was a fairly run-of-the-mill, weaker typhoon for them. Hopefully no significant damage given how strong they build their buildings there, but certainly a nasty day and night for them here as a night falls right now in Okinawa as the eye moves by and they get the backside. Weather will quickly improve during the next 6 hours or so as the backside comes through, which is much drier. This will continue up toward the Japanese mainland following Fanphone, which came through about a week ago, so a double hit for the Japanese mainland. Good news is, as these typhoons usually do at this time of year, they are weakening rapidly as they come up this far north. Now in the Indian Ocean, a rather bigger deal is this cyclone Hudhud now showing an eye on IR satellite imagery, and we look at the microwave and it's still struggling with the core. It's weaker on the east side, but we do have a defined eye now, and we see that on radar as well, the strong west eye wall, a little bit weaker on the east side. But what happened since yesterday is it was over cooler water of 28 degrees Celsius yesterday. The water near the Indian coastline is warmer at about 30 degrees Celsius, so as Hudhud has moved northwest, it has moved over warmer ocean water, and that has allowed it to strengthen, now estimated to be a Category 3 as it moves toward a very populated Indian coastline. So this is going to be a big deal for them, and something that doesn't happen terribly often in the Bay of Bengal, but during the autumn monsoon season, as the monsoon starts coming back south over the ocean, we can get these cyclones developing. And so this is coming ashore now as a powerful cyclone, will be a major impact for India. So that's the tropics. Again, a very busy day. In the Atlantic, we just have Fay moving toward Bermuda. Tropical storm warnings out for them. We're watching the wave behind Invest 90L, not expected to develop in the imminent future, but could have a shot at becoming a storm north of the Greater Antilles next week. Is worth keeping an eye on if you live anywhere from Puerto Rico to the southeast Bahamas. Is potentially something to keep an eye out for next week. And then in Hawaii, it could be that the tropics are in their forecast as well next week. Not any details available yet, but the pattern favors the potential for some kind of development that could move toward their general area next week. So just something to keep an eye on out in the Central Pacific as well. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.